the top under the More menu to toggle.
All right. Oh, do you mind doing this one, and then I'll do the next ones?
Yeah.
Right, let's start recording. Cool. So Ray, I don't know much about Ray. She's come in from Griffith or Bond. I can't remember. Let me just find out. Oh, she's from Griffith. And she's just one of the lecturers. Again, I'm trying to get some students, but we're getting these lecturers. She's, anyway, she's just been recommended to have a chat. She's doing some stuff with the police at the moment. Tracking, that sounds like something. No, hang on. What's up here? Oh, there we go. Ray is, how do I get Ray in? Tick. Admitting. There she is. How are you, Ray?
Hey, good, thanks. How you going?
Not too bad. I'll just put my little camera on so you can see my sweet dial too. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good,
good, thanks.
Good. And we got Dan's actually sitting in Perth today, so we're utilising the true journey of virtual collaboration. So listen, Ray, thanks for taking the time. How much? I just can't remember. Did Paul introduce you to us, or did Danny? I can't remember the backstory.
Danny Delabosca, likely.
Yeah. Cool. Do you mind if we record this session?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
That's fine, because we're just trying to record all the various interactions we're getting, so we sort of, can get some interesting sort of feedback and maybe put some stuff together eventually that we could maybe send back to Epic. I'm not sure yet. We'll just see how we go. But we've only started recording them recently, but it's been good to sort of reflect on them and actually get other people to watch them too. And we're trying to explain what this all is and to sort of get different responses from various people and those sorts of things. So thanks, Ray. I appreciate it. So Ray, what we'd like to do is just quickly give you an overview of what we're trying to achieve, run some demos and really just to see from your point of view, if you think, what we're trying to achieve here has got some legs for you as a potential user, or indeed, your students, down the track. It's early days. It's very early days. We're still very much in this sort of testing process, but I guess as part of that, what we're trying to do is wherever possible, get feedback from as wide a range of people as possible, just to get their input and guidance to see if we're heading in the right direction, or you may well have some suggestions to us that you think might be useful for us to go and investigate. So I said at the first phase of a fairly long journey, we're trying to sort of run maybe 3 or 4 of these closed sessions with I'm going to say industry partners over the next 4 to 6 months before we sort of go back to Epic, if you like, with our findings. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Epic Unreal Engine and all of that stuff. Have you had any overview or appreciation? So
No.
Epic is the world's biggest gaming engine, and it's a pretty powerful bit of kit. We've adopted that engine, as have other industries, to try to solve solutions for our industry. And I guess at the moment, our industry is the planning, infrastructure, and environment sort of industry. But to be perfectly frank, the applications of this are quite enormous. We're then combining that with a thing called Cesium World Terrain, which is open source data that's come out of the US. Think of Cesium like Google, I suppose, but with the ability to do stuff and add stuff too, because it's open source, which is pretty cool, as is the Unreal Engine. So the entire globe, we have a spatially accurate digital twin of the entire globe. And the other third party to this that makes it really workable is in AWS, so Amazon Web Services. So we've now got the whole Internet of Things connected to this. So the ability to add in data sets is quite extraordinary. Our journey is taking, I guess, we've been using the Unreal Engine in our consultancy business, as a tool for assisting with approval process, community consultation, helping people understand outcomes, and then moving on to, I guess, a sales and marketing journey. But really, what this is all about is this paradigm shift of moving from a 2D plane to an immersive real-time 3D world, and to allow anyone to do this without any technical knowledge. And that's the wonder of the Unreal Engine, their gamification process, their ability to take all that complex stuff in the background and wrap a really simple UI around it is kind of what we're driving at. So the Sketchtime journey, the SaaS solution, software solution, is taking sort of our 40 years of industry knowledge in the planning and design and property sector, infrastructure sector, the last 10 or so years in technology, and then wrapping it into something that ultimately we can license and allow anyone to tap into the knowledge and the power that we've been using with the Unreal Engine for the last 5 or so or 6 years. As I said, early days yet. We're looking for investment to take this further, but again, we value any input that you might have along the way. And I note that you quite clearly said you're not sure you're the right target audience. I'm going to say it. Hopefully you are. In the sense that we're just trying to expose people to stuff that they might not have seen before, and give them an opportunity to do things in a different way to get through the process, and to give you all these sort of simple tools to do that. So I guess that's the overview of it. So what we might do, Rab, okay, is just quickly run you through the feature set, and then have a bit of a Q&A at the end, if that's okay. As I said at the start, we're about the cesium world terrain and using that as the base. So rather than a flat 2D, use it as a 3D, but then importantly to be able to tap into all these data sets. So Dan's just loaded up a different data set. There's so much data out there, but traditionally most people can't access that unless you're technically minded and you've got access to, the GIS data and Esri and those sorts of things, which obviously some of our stakeholders do. But Dan's just loading up a number of base data sets that are freely available that we can access via a push of a button. So this is all cloud and web based. So things sometimes take a little bit of time given the internet reality. So the first thing with what we're trying to do with the Unreal Engine and with the 3D cesium world terrain is allow people to sort of understand the environment or the site, whether it's a big site or a small site, and then to be able to sort of tap into a whole variety of data sets that are available across the country. And to do that at a push of a button, because most of these data sets, as I said, are pretty difficult for the average person to get to. But to open those up and to let people sort of understand that data in 3D. So Dan, I might just let you explain some of the data sets that you're tapping into across various parts of the country. But I guess our end goal, Ray, is to get the hundreds of thousands of publicly available data sets and make them available to everyone at a push of a button based on what you want, and obviously different stakeholders will have different needs for different data sets. And ultimately, when you sort of log on to this, you'll sort of filter what you're looking for. And so, you'll only access what's of interest to you, I suppose. So sorry, Dan, I'll let you go for the moment, mate.
Yeah, so at the moment we're just looking at the Tasmanian state data, just a couple of selections for fire attributes. This one is, so we can see bushfire prevalence and risk. There's a few others. Sorry, Luke, I just noticed we don't have the opacity slider at the moment for these. Right.
Okay, so that what that was, Ray, is that in each of these data sets we can slide an opacity slider so you can see what's underneath it. But in fairness, this is all still work in progress, and sometimes things, we have a few bugs, but normally our opacity slider will enable you to slide to see what's under the color, if you like.
Then we have some planning cadasters and some gradient highlights from Tasmanian government, so we can see land gradients and outlines of lots at the moment.
But again, all the planning schemes, all the environmental overlays will all be accessible. But importantly, you can roll it over a 3D data set. That's the big breakthrough of this, because a lot of this stuff, as you well know, is available in 2D and through Esri and other bits and pieces. But the ability to have it sort of in that 3D world and then to add these other things to it is the important thing for us. So this was just a bit of a demo of just how simply we can access data once it's set up. Dan, do you have the sort of the stuff like the shipwrecks and the buses from WA? I know you're working through all. Yeah. And listen, we're going to have a much more simpler sort of search and UI kind of things to roll in. And there's obviously going to be some data that's not available and some project data that is, kept behind closed doors that our clients will only access themselves and not in the public domain. But this is over in Perth, and I think there's bus routes here, and I mean there's so much stuff around, and so all we're really doing is just trying to expose people to, I guess, for those that aren't aware of data, just what's available and how easy it is to tap into it, and how we can sort of filter that based on what you need, based on the subject matter, and based on what you're wanting to achieve. So that's the Perth bus routes, is it, Dan?
Yeah, this is the Western Australian school bus routes.
And you've got the shipwrecks up there.
It looks like the shipwrecks haven't made it. Oh no, there it is.
Maybe.
Hello.
Ew.
Hey,
Dr. Ray.
thank you so much. I'm just in a meeting. Thank you so much.
Is Vince flying around?
Yeah, he's just up the other end.
Cool.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you.
Anyway,
Sorry,
so
just very
no, that's
important
okay.
delivery.
No, that's okay. So again, that's just an example. Then all the shipwrecks that are, off the WA coast, and all these can be meta tagged and a whole lot of other things. So again, we're just trying to select a wide variety of different data sets to sort of show, what's going to be available. So who knows who might be wanting to look at shipwrecks? I don't know, but that's just one example of stuff that can be there. We'll also have the opportunity too, Ray, if you've got a certain set of data that for instance, the university have access to, that isn't public or that isn't in the, you can import that data and view it in this realm also. So that ability will be there for you to tap into servers that you might have that's not in the public domain. So I guess at the end of the day, though, understanding the site in 3D, looking at the data sets, looking at those overlays, is one step of it. But then, I guess for us, the next journey is then how do you interact and how do you create and how do you start doing things in the 3D space, and to do it collaboratively, in a virtual world. So it's called Sketchtime for the sense that we really want people to start sketching and start creating ideas in the 3D space from day one. So we're going to have these little draw tools. Dan's just having a bit of fun here. Dan's an Unreal Engine tech artist, so he's not a designer or whatever, but he's learnt what a ridgeline is and he's learnt what a gully is. And, but the important thing here is that this sketch tool is enabling you to do it in the 3D space, and to roll over contours or to draw on buildings, or, Dan, you might go up to some photogrammetry. So that's kind of a pretty big breakthrough to have that tool that actually you can sketch in real time in 3D. And there's an awful lot of data sets now coming out in photogrammetry, and Southeast Queensland is pretty well covered. If you just go up to Caloundra there, we've got all the Gold Coast, all of Brisbane.
Oh, sorry, I went past it.
You did, that's all right. So the ability to draw and sketch and sort of do this sort of broad brush sort of planning and concept work. Now that's just going to load a bit faster. That's just the internet, Dan, is it?
Yeah, it's coming.
Oh, there we go. Loads up a little bit. But the ability then to draw on the buildings or draw on the roads, or, it's interesting talking to the TMR, to do all their broad brush sort of, big pen planning around road corridors and rail corridors, and to do that in real time, but to do it in a spatially accurate environment is sort of something that's, relatively cool. So, you've got that ability to do all that sort of stuff, different pen thicknesses and all those sorts of things. We're then going to have all these little sort of planning icons that will help the discussion piece. So, Dan, I appreciate that, this is all work in progress, and we've actually got what we're seeing here is a new UI that we've just brought up, Ray. So I just don't know if we've got all that stuff, Dan, that we used to have. So is that all still active, Dan? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we've got it.
So, all these planning icons, Dan just trying to find a bit of space so that you can just sort of drag and drop and interact with in terms of trying to, communicate certain things. So all that sort of initial site analysis that you might want to do, and you eventually able to scale all this stuff, change color, and do all those sorts of things. So we're going to develop, I don't know how many of these things we will develop, but there'll be a lot, in terms of what you might want to do in terms of just highlighting various broad sort of, planning elements. That's a little volume tool. So a whole lot of these things you can sort of drag and drop into the real world space and to do it in real time. All of this stuff's geo-referenced, so it can be exported into other programs. We'll be able to, at the end of this process, once you've got it, whatever you've drawn or whatever you've brought in here, to be able to export it to CAD or other programs. So that sort of integration of data and data sets are pretty important to us. As I said earlier, we're kind of starting with the planning world because that's kind of our background. So we've got all these little planning aids. Dan, we've got some of those like the walkable catchments and that sort of stuff. So, you know, understanding walkability and be able to change that on the fly and to sort of, you know, have those discussions with particularly non-technical stakeholders and to help them sort of understand distances and community planning and walkable catchments and those sorts of things. Dan, I'm not as familiar as you with this new UI. So what other tools do you have in that planning realm? Do you have the grid tool and
Grid tools under the guides now.
Sorry, I get confused. Yeah, so we got things like the grid tool that sort of, you know, just like in the old days, maybe you still do it. Yeah, you used to slide grid paper under something and use it as a sketch tool, so you can do 1 kilometre down to one centimetre if you want to go that small. Again, to help you with that sketching over the top, you know. So we're going to have a whole series of those sorts of tools. What other tools are there, Dan, at the moment?
All of them. We've got our volume tool, or did you want to go to the calculators? Or?
No, you can jump into the volume tool. So again, this is more around, I guess, you know, again, from an urban planning point of view. It's a big volume, but you know, it's the reality of being able to do something very quick, and then having all these little widgets that are going to give us these calculators. So, you know, Dan, I can't read that because I'm not that close into it, but it's got. Can you just run through what you've got there, Dan? I'm not sure if Ray, if you can read it.
I'm just pretending I'm making a new Boeing facility, so I made a floor height of 8 meters with 4 levels. So that's our massive our new warehouse.
So Dan, can you just turn off the dimensions? They get a bit confusing there. That little X. I think it's the X that's it down there, isn't it? That little. Turn off the dimensions. See the X? Is it the one underneath it? No. I told you that one there. Yep, there we go. So again, so that there is just simply taking a shape, 4 floors, and gives you the GFA, the volume, you know. So again, interesting from a broad planning perspective, and you can do 5 or 6 and create a town centre, a whole lot of other things. And then underneath that, you know, you've got costings down. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these yet. So if you want to then look at the net lettable area, if you know how many units or the size of the unit. So is that net lettable, Dan? And then you want, you know, you've got 200 units. You know, I can't read that, Dan. Is that anyway? You just punch in whatever you want, Ray, and it gives you these statistics. So we're going to develop a whole series of these based on various industries, because it's all just based on, you know, criteria and planning requirements. And to be able to do that on the fly is what we're trying to do. And then, you know, we've got the car park calculation there, Dan.
Yep.
So you can, you know, work out amount of cars, you can work out the cost of cars, you know, and a whole array of things, a whole range of things that we're going to develop. And it's all around, you know, just sort of taking experiences or things that used to take time, but be able to really do it at a push of a button and do it on the fly. And then, you know, spit all this out as a data set, you know, CSV file or whatever that you can import into other things. So we're just, again, one of many hundreds of tools we're going to start to develop that's going to help expedite the planning process and indeed other processes. You know, again, I said at the start, this is more around the planning and the development world, but, you know, it can go into farming, it can go into retirement villages, it can go into shopping centres, it can go into anything, to be perfectly frank. And it's around this journey of visual literacy and be able to do it all in real time. So, you know, where this becomes pretty cool is if you go up into, say, the photogrammetry world where you're, you know, looking at maybe building impacts and building heights. So Dan, you want to go back up to Clownja or Brisbane or somewhere?
No, have I missed it again?
Yeah. So for instance, if, you know, somebody's looking at you know, just doing really ballpark like that development side there, that'll do, Dan. Let's just put a 10-story building, you know, on over those houses. If council were looking at something or a developer or whatever, and, you know, maybe give it a color. So be able to really see the visual impact of that in real time from anywhere in that environment. So Dan, maybe just go to another part of the city. Can we kill that widget or not on this one? Do we have our widget killer?
I haven't seen a way to.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean that doesn't help, does it? so Ray, again, this is all part of. So we need to get rid of that so you can see the building, Dan. I thought we had that happening on something.
I've made it work for the other ones, but Lukey's still working on this.
Okay, no worries. But you get the idea that you can sort of do that in real time and to see the impact of it in real time, and that's what it's all about, is to sort of look at that journey. In addition to all of those sorts of tools, we got. Oh, there you go. I knew it was there. So again, to be able to sort of look at that from anywhere, from any location, and have a a really, I guess, informed discussion around what the visual impact of that building might be is what it's all about. I think I read in your email that you're doing something with was it 5G towers or some?
Yeah, cell phone towers.
Yeah, cell phone towers, and look at the visual impact of that, and then look at, I don't know exactly what you're looking at, but to do that in this real-time environment. And the important thing for us is to take that technical data that you may have and make it easy for non-technical decision makers to understand, and to be able to get them involved in that decision-making process very early on, so they can get to an outcome faster. In addition to all this stuff, we're going to have all of these, again, from a planning point of view, all these 2D drag and drop sort of bits of content that maybe go back to a greenfield site, where we're going to be able to, and we'll have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of these things. So if you're developing a site and you want to understand the impact of a town centre or something, and we're going to have a different filter system here. So Dan, I'm not quite sure what you're bringing out, so you might describe it.
This is the Sanctuary Cove community facility. Yeah,
so if you just zoom down there, Dan, so that's that community facility at Hope Island at scale in the area that we're looking at. Does the opacity slider work there, Dan?
Yep.
And what we can also do, we can then go and visit, and we can rotate that and that sort of stuff. So where that's really useful is that we're talking to clients and they say, oh, listen, what space planning do we need for this facility? We can drag and drop those things in very quickly, and then we can go to Google and see that, in its environment. And ultimately what we'll be able to do is give you the ability to go to wherever you want in the world, cut out what you want, and then bring that back into your environment that you're studying in real time, at scale, which is pretty cool. So these are the things that I guess, we traditionally do in the planning process, but do it in a very manual way. And we're trying to do it in a much more sort of in more intuitive real-time way. So we look at, scale. So Dan's being pretty bold, putting a marina in the middle of Caboolture there, but that's okay. So again, Ray, there's going to be this whole series of 2D overlays. It could be solar farms. It could be, sewage treatment plants. It could be anything, all that scale. So again, the TMR guys are interested in doing all this sort of stuff in terms of their, broad brush, what they call it, fat pen planning, where they could go and drag and drop intersections that they already know to see how it impacts on an area that doesn't have that intersection or whatever. So that's all the 2D world, and we have the same with all the 3D world. So 3D objects, for instance. Do you want to do that?
Sorry, did you want to do the calculators before?
Sure, let's do the calculators. Yep. So again, we're going to have, literally hundreds of these things. So this is like the lot calculator. So if you've got a chunk of land and then you just measure it out, you might zoom in a bit, Dan, so I can see that, or maybe not. So it simply tells you, you can calculate this two ways. You can look at your efficiency, and it tells you how much land you have. You can either type in lots per hectare, or you can type in average square meter, average size of lots, and automatically it tells you sort of how many lots you can fit in there, But that's just one example of so many things that we're going to be able to do, and sort of do that on the fly. You can add in your cost of construction and your sales price, and all of a sudden you get these ballpark figures for understanding feasibilities, and be able to do all this on the fly, and then to be able to provide certain specialists with their ability to add their own fields of content or own fields of data, so they can do this themselves. So this is maybe a solar farm, same thing, where you can generate, you sort of tap in the amount of usable space you have depending on topography. It gives you how many panels, gives you the amount of kilowatts, and then you can do costs and do all these sorts of things. So Again, just an example of the little calculator tools that we'll be able to introduce to help different sectors do things in a simpler, faster way. So these are the 3D drag and drop tools. And again, we'll have, we'll not only have our own assets, but importantly, be able to tap into the, a vast amount of global 3D, library assets that are out there. So Dan, what are you playing with here?
Just the stadium.
All right, so this is the Gabba Stadium, Olympic Stadium, but Dan's, I think, going to drag and drop in. So that's the London Olympic Stadium. So very quickly, non-technical, and most of our decision makers are non-technical. You can see very quickly that if someone says, "Oh, we want a 100,000 seat stadium where the Gabba is," very easily you can see that there's a fairly significant impact on the adjoining land area. And that's just the stadium itself without any of the surrounding facilities. So be able to do all that in real time. So again, we're going to have thousands of these assets. You want to go and do a little tree, you want to do a little, you want to plan out the Gabba, you can do that, Dan?
Yeah, I'll turn it into a park.
And this is the other thing too, from a usability point of view, we really want to give this sort of tool to anyone and everyone, and not to be restricted as to what you can do. Let people do what they want with it. I don't know if somebody, if there's a school program to say, oh, let's turn the Gabba into a park. What could that feel like? Let anyone have that ability to, start planning, what a park could look like at the Gabba. I don't know. But again, we're going to have all these assets you can drag and drop at scale to get a feel for things. Dan, let's just go to maybe Roma Street and do.
So let's get rid of all of this.
Yeah, there we go.
Roma.
It was interesting. We're meeting with one of the big development groups, and they were looking at a what they call a rooftop garden in a building in Melbourne. So we went to that building and put a few trees on the top of the building, and they could look at it as a visual impact of what you could see from the rooftop and who could see the trees. So here's Roma Street. So we got things like our road tools where we'll be able to select if they want to maybe turn this into more of a boulevard or something. I don't know, Dan, you probably need to find one that fits within there. Maybe, I don't know, get one of those. Maybe not too wide.
We'll find
But
out.
Dan's just gone through Roma Street in Brisbane. And automatically change that to a boulevard that's got a centre median, bike lanes, and pedestrian paths. So again, be able to do that in real time. Obviously, there's existing photogrammetry there that we need to cut out, but then to be able to sort of I guess you can change that out too, right, Dan?
Yeah. And make it into a light rail.
All right, let's put the Gold Coast light rail down the middle of it.
If it wants to.
Oh, there we go. So that's the corridor for the Gold Coast light rail. Look at that sort of impact very, very quickly as to what the scale might be. I guess you can put. Oh, that's interesting. What's happened? What's happened to the light rail down there? That gone over.
The light pole in the way.
The light pole in the way. We're resolved. But then we can also drop the rail on it, right? The carriages.
Yes.
If you can find them. So again, as an example, and even the stations too, Dan. Maybe.
I think I've frozen.
It's all right. It's all part of testing, Dan. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Just took a bit of time, but there's the Gold Coast light rail at scale, sitting on Roma Street, and as I said at the start, Ray, it's all about doing this stuff really early on to get sort of an idea of things, as a briefing tool. What have we got up there, Dan? You're putting the station in, are you?
Yeah, putting the station in this room.
All right.
Maybe.
Maybe. It's going to be patient with the web. Oh, there's the station there.
Ah, cool.
So again, just, you know, very quickly to get an understanding of the land take of a double-sided station, and what that means, you know. So the whole idea is really when we I said it's very early days, but our concept is to be able to lay out a concept of the light rail through the streets of Brisbane in 30 minutes, and to get some really crude feedback as to does this make sense or not, you know, and then to export all this and to get CAD line work that you can give to your engineers and go and do things. Ultimately, with the way AI is going, it'll end up bloody designing the whole thing for you anyway, but we're not quite there yet, you know, but that's where it will all go. Because, you know, engineering design, road design, rail is all based on criteria and all based on, you know, requirements. And it'd be interesting to see where AI takes all of that. So, you know, activation, what's that, Dan? That's all people and cars and stuff, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah, sorry, this is my my test. This is the new browser and method of dragging and dropping things.
Is there anything in that, or?
Oh no, it's just my my demo for loading like multiple scenes of things.
Yeah, so what will happen there is that there'll be little I guess thumbnails of what you want to drag and drop that you can put in, you know, and again, all this is going to be web-based, so it's all cloud-based stuff. Where are we up to, Dan? Got too much more to go?
We have the Google search to do.
Google search, let's go look at the Google search. So again,
and also comments.
Okay, so let's do the comments tool. So this is where I think this virtual collaboration and community consultation and a whole range of other things will really change eventually, where people can get into this 3D space and start leaving notes or voice messages, making comment on what they think. Obviously, it needs to be curated and filtered and that sort of stuff, but to be able to do all this live and to do it, you know, with 10 or 15 different people, all within the one scene, anywhere in the world, you know, I think makes it pretty interesting. So these are all just little sticky notes Dan's putting in there. They're all geo-referenced. Again, they can all be exported. Eventually, Dan, I know I haven't said this to you, but we'll get the ability to upload a voice message to that also, and the ability then for you, Ray or Emma, to come back, look at somebody's notes from yesterday or you know a previous day, or look at a previous option or a version. So all this will be version controlled. What else you got there, Dan?
That's it, just layers. We can have multiple layers in the same scene.
Yeah, and again, all geo-referenced, yeah? Yep. Let's quickly look at, does our snapshot tool and the measurement tools, that sort of stuff work on this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so all the real-time, just run through the real-time measurement tools. So
yeah, we have the usual sort of tools that you might need for measuring your environment: height, length, area, and radius. Area.
And again, we're going to start just to continually evolve these widgets as we sort of talk more to industry experts and sort of understand what's going to work best for them. What else do we have there? You're going to do the snapshot tool.
Snapshot tool is half working.
Yeah, that's right. So you can take your own snapshot. So you just probably did that a bit fast. So you can take a snapshot. Can you mark this up? Do all that stuff in there? Yeah. So you can, if you want to take a snapshot, mark it up and send it as an email to somebody that's not in the meeting, you can do that straight away and email it, you know, and ping it off, you know. You can create your own animations. Can you do that in this one, Dan?
Yes, if we switch to video, it will start recording our screen.
So you do a little video output and then that records in real time, saves it, and then you can send that off, you know. So that's, yeah, that certainly helps in our planning world when we're sort of talking to, you know, people who've got council presentation or stakeholder presentation, so we can mock stuff up very quickly and then we can tidy it up and get something out to them almost in real time, you know, which is great. As I said at the start, our journey is importantly is open source and the ability to integrate this with other software programs and other data sets. So we really want to sort of embrace that open source technology and not sort of be tied to anything. And that's part of why we like the Unreal Engine and Cesium and AWS, is that sort of global integration is part of what they're looking at doing. Dan's just using Google now to go to anywhere in the world. So where have you gone, Dan?
To Melbourne Airport, just for fun.
Melbourne Airport. So And then you've got all the usual Google sort of search API stuff that just links straight in. What are you doing there, Dan? There.
There we go. If we want to get to Cafe 747 from the airport, it'll take us 15 minutes.
Yeah. So all that sort of stuff. Hey, do you want to go to your favourite little White Horse in Calgary or wherever you are?
Sure.
This is there you go. What's it called? Yeah, White Horse. Yeah.
Yeah, White Horse in the Yukon.
So this is again just the benefit of the cesium world terrain is that we can go anywhere in the world and we get this spatially accurate output. I think there we go. So what part of the world are we in, Dan?
The Yukon up in northern Canada.
Yeah. So one of the things I liked about this, and Dan's been there, and he's been there in winter, is that in the winter solstice. You want to do that one, Dan? You only get literally 3 hours of sun during the day. Because of where you are. So again, all these little tools that I think what a really cool way for students to understand things from a geography point of view, and we can go to the top of Mount Everest, and we can go anywhere in the world. Hey, you want to also, just after you go to Mount Everest, Dan, just also show the photogrammetry data set. So all of those buildings there are just generated by cesium. They're all spatially accurate, but let's just go to Mount Everest first, because it's always good to go to the top of the world. And again, you can sort of add whatever you want to this and do whatever you like to it. So who knows what people might want to do with that. Stand scaling the top of Mount Everest faster than most. So again, this is, we were doing some, user testing with a, 12 and 10-year-old the other day, and again, just their ability to sort of have a look at what that street, what that landscape is. Now they can do that in Google, but then the ability to do things and draw things and put people in there and have a bit of fun, and one of the things we're going to do is, oh no, you're drawing on the mountain, Dan, is that, we're going to have all these explore modes. So you can get on a set of skis, you can get on a hot air, all these things that you can do in a game, for the kids to do. So who knows what we'll end up doing, but it's just quite incredible, what you can do. But our journey is to make all this accessible without any technical knowledge. Just drag and drop, do bits and pieces. Hey, finally, Dan, do you want to bring up the I know you want to put a barbecue up there on the Mount Everest, but you're not going to be able to do that. But again, when I think about this, I think of the stories that these kids can tell, through going to these different places and creating a little storyboard. Who knows? I mean, I get ahead of myself. Do you want to just pull up our little project that shows where all the photogrammetry data sets are? I reckon, because I'm not, is that under data? I think we should put it under data. But this is an example of what's starting to happen around the world now, is that the world is being captured in photogrammetry. So we don't go to San Francisco, and these sorts of data sets are happening all over the globe, and they're slowly being exposed. So here's San Francisco at completely spatially accurate 7 centimeter and 2 centimeter virtual world that we can interact with and do everything that we were doing. And eventually, these data sets will be available anywhere in the world, and so the ability to sort of start in this environment for anyone at any time with any idea, I think is pretty cool. And what we're trying to do is just expose, a lot of these non-technical people to what's available, and let them have a play, let alone the professional groups who are already sort of across some of this stuff. So Dan, I think that's kind of a pretty reasonable overview of where we're at, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So Ray, I know it's probably a lot to take in, but any initial reaction,
Yeah, and obviously I'm just trying to connect it to the work that I do, which is, very different to the kind of city planning and that kind of stuff. So to give you an idea of, I've got a project at the moment, which is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I'm hoping that it does turn into a longer term relationship with government. So I'm working with, it's very confidential, so I'm going to be very vague, but I'm working with Queensland Police, and my experiences with them are similar to, working at Griffith. They're very, very security conscious. And so my first thought would be with this project as is, I'm very limited with what type of applications I can use. So for example, I often will visually map things out in Miro. I can't do that. I can't store things in Dropbox. So there's kind of lots of these limitations related to the security and the privacy of the data. So that would be the first thing that I'd have to look at. And the other thing for me is that I'm not really using the mapping software for like what I am using it for is to create narratives. So, one of the challenges we have at the moment as society is we've got CCTV cameras everywhere. We've got the cell phone towers. And so if you want to find something out, it's not the fact that there's not the information there. It's the opposite. There's so much. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So my kind of role is trying to strip out all of the unnecessary data and create a narrative that the Netflix generation can understand. So it's about using these tools, I guess, to turn things from that raw data into visual narratives that aren't overwhelming.
I mean, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. Like, I love it, and it's definitely the field that I love working in. And it's so obviously the accuracy of these things is really important, but the key thing for me is then how I can export them, and those, the tags that you went over, I think they were the tags or the little icons and stuff you can add. That's super interesting to me. But the style of those is really important. So right down to, what font they are, what colors they are. So that little tag you have at the moment, I absolutely love that. And what I'd need to do is add like, imagine if you've got 20 people running around and you need to connect their movements all together over a week. I'd need each tag to have a photo. And then I want to, so these people are running around doing activities together and then separating all at different times, different locations. So then you get this web. And then you have 5 people in the car and then 2 of them in one car. And so adding tags to maps and then exporting as like video would be amazing, because at the moment what I'm doing is actually subcontracting someone to do this for me in ARC, GIS or whatever it's called, because I have zero interest in the technical back end with those things.
And is this which area is this allowed to say? Is it obviously Queensland? Is it Queensland or
it's Australia based?
Australia based, I mean the beauty of this and listen, we have a company called V2i that stands for Vision to Implementation. So I'm often sitting at the visionary end saying this is what we can do. Poor old Dan and the team then try to make it all work through the implementation of it. But what I've learned and what I am learning is that there's almost nothing that this gamification world, and particularly these big gaming engines that have billions of dollars of R&D behind them, can't do. And it's the biggest challenge that we have as an industry is allowing you and our customers or the individual users to enable their imagination to say, imagine if I could do this, because traditionally we're so limited to what the software allows us to do, whereas with this gamification world, with the power of the Unreal Engine, with Cesium and AWS, the ability to do just about anything is there. But the important thing, as I said earlier, is to take the complexity of what you were just describing and turn it into something that a decision maker can understand relatively easily, And so all that data that you're talking about, it's just all data. What I think the Unreal Engine is very good at doing, and what we try to do, and it's not just us, it's the whole global movement of moving from, as I said, this 2D to 3D and creating this common visual language that anyone can understand, is to sort of take that data and to present it in a simple way, that allows you to get your message across, and hopefully have more informed conversations to lead to more informed and faster decisions to get to where you need to get to go. At the end of the day. So certainly would love to explore. Given, are you Brisbane or where are you? Or are you Gold Coast based?
I'm based in Brisbane. Yeah,
okay,
based in Brisbane.
Yeah. So, I mean, given that, you're, in fact, we've got a couple of guys in Brisbane. So, I'd love to explore, just how we might be able to help that journey, and to maybe just, output it in a different way. Where are you now, Dan?
This is Denver.
Denver. There we go. So, for instance, all the capital cities of Australia have got this data set. you know, so to take the movement of people, if it's in the city or to build up areas and sort of, you know, help. Again, I don't know enough about the project to really make any informed commentary, but there's so much data out there that is not accessible at the moment, and we're just trying to free that data up and to make it accessible, particularly if it's public data. If the ratepayers have paid for it, you know, let's try to get it into their hands and let them do some interesting things with it. You know, even all this LiDAR data that's freely available. You know, it's just all available data sets.
Yeah, it's great. And I can see the applications for especially Danny. Like I can imagine Danny wouldn't have dreams about this software, but we've got the interior spatial designers as well. And I work a lot with the First Nations department here. So even that would be great, mapping traditional owner countries and
we're talking about that. And to do it in a more, I guess, just visually an interesting way when they can describe the hills and the gullies and the rivers and the creeks that make up their story. You know, and to do it in a 3D way, you know, absolutely. I think, that's right. Danny mentioned that. So that's certainly interested in that journey too, you know, of how to tell that story in a more engaging way and to get the end users or your stakeholders or your customers a bit more excited about it, you know. Who knows?
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
Yeah. I guess the next question is, Ray, you know, are you interested, you know, because we're continually evolving this, and, you know, what we want to do if we can every couple of months is basically come back to the people that we've had this initial discussion with and sort of show them where it's developed, you know, just to get any further feedback or any input, you know. Is that something you might be able to help us with? You know?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
You know, and again, it's literally just doing this, and then ultimately what we want to do, probably within 4 months, is then give this to you for you to have a play. You know, it'd just be a web-based. Oh no, it'd be a downloadable version, but it'd be fairly light because we're drawing everything from the web, and just let you have a play and to come back with us with some feedback. You know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and like I said, hopefully this project turns into ongoing projects, and it would be nice to have a bit more like a, you know, I don't like relinquishing control to other people for things. So the more that I can do myself.
And in terms of security, it's like the work we do at TMR. They host this themselves, you know, on their own. Yes, it's Amazon Web Services based, but they have an Amazon account, as I'm sure the Queensland Police would, you know, under there, and it's locked away into their, you know, system, so it's as safe as listen, who knows what's safe anymore, but you know, it's as safe as their other cloud-based applications are, because it's in their system hosted on the cloud. So it's not our system, it's not something that you license from us. There's no licensing fees, there's none. Well, Sketchtime will be a licensing fee, you know, but again, the hosting will be sitting with AWS and all those sorts of things, or on your own servers, you know, based through AWS. So
and I think that's something we can work around. Like if this becomes the tool that I need to use, so at the moment the ARC near maps, so that's the one that I'm using because that's what the police have confidence in and what they're currently using, and so it's just that relationship with them that I want to maintain. And because I'm building that relationship, I don't want to be introducing new stuff now, but if there's a way that I can provide them with products that are at a lower cost and take less time, then I think that's just a process of going through how we can make it secure and how they're comfortable with that data.
And listen, I've got no doubt that that this sort of information and application, I'll be very surprised if the Queensland Police aren't already using this in some other areas of their departments, I suppose, because it's such a powerful tool, and that's what we find when we talk to governments, that, you know, there are certain sectors or certain pillars within the department that are already aware of this, but the majority of them aren't. And when you dig deep enough, there, you know, most of them are across things like cesium and across the Unreal Engine and what it can do. For instance, I'm sure, like in the police, a lot of their simulation and training in the virtual world, they're probably using things like the Unreal Engine and probably using things like cesium, you know, to do all their virtual, you know, training, et cetera.
Yeah. The stuff I'm working with is like the criminal cases. So I think that has like the extra layer of it just, yeah, it's a minefield. It took me like a couple of weeks just to work out where to store the files. And so, yeah, the different levels of permissions. I have to use different systems at Griffith, different storage areas. And
because that's the other area we spoke to Danny about, is that I know it's becoming reasonably, I don't know what's the word, accepted, but that whole virtual crime scene. Yeah, how do you take this technology to recreate a crime scene so the judge or the jury or whoever, can have a better understanding as to what's happened, and this technology has been used, in all the defense for it's absolutely accurate. There's, it's very very tried and tested in defense, in health, in a whole series of industries. And I'd love to. In fact, I was talking to a criminal lawyer at one of the planning conferences, because I think the amount of time and effort that's put into trying to describe a crime scene, in a court hearing or whatever, and how basic it still is compared to what it could be,
Yeah.
But I know
the other thing too is I don't want to do myself out of the job, so I don't want this to be so great that the police can go and do it without me. So the thing that
listen, don't be like that. My God,
the thing that I can offer
it just gives you more ability to do more important things. It's a bit like, and you're right, and this is the challenge with this. It's a very real point, is that there is this perception that this disruption to the process is scaring people. But hey, it's just technology. It's a bit like if I said, Ray, get your pen and paper out and give me 2,467 divided by 25. Can you do that for me? And you could. It might take you 10 minutes. You just bring up a calculator. So you just be able to do.
As a graphic designer, I've been through that whole phase of, the technology is ruining our jobs and blah, blah, blah. And I'm definitely not subscribing to that. But what I do need to have is the capacity to control the way that, so when you're dropping those icons on and the colors and the style of those things, like that's what I will always have the knowledge for, that the police won't.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh, hallelujah, girl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a while before the AI can take over all of that. I mean, it's heading that way, but all this does, it's like any enabling technology. It just enables you. This is to take away the time and effort that you put into what I'm going to say menial tasks that the computer can do for you quickly to enable you to do the important things or to spend more time on the important things.
Yeah.
That's another simple way of looking at it, so here's the Queensland Police. There we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ray, I'm conscious of time. We're almost, at our hour's end.
No problem. That's been really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Would you mind if I send you a little survey to fill out? It's very, very high end. And Danny and the boys have done it too. So it's just, we're just trying to gather feedback so we can sort of send stuff back to Epic and indeed other partners that we have to say, people think there's some benefit moving from 2D to 3D and that there's some application for this. I guess just making sure that it's not a waste of time,
Yeah.
So Dan, what are you doing there? I know you're just playing.
That I just dragged a whole scene in.
Yeah. So, because what we're looking at doing too is be able to recreate. So, for instance, this could be a whole crime scene that we've just dragged in and brought it into an environment, and then you can manipulate things on the fly. You can move people around. You can do all that sort of stuff, There's a whole lot of things we're playing with, to be honest. Thanks, Ray.
Awesome. No problem. Thank you.
I'll send you a link. And listen, please, anything that we could do to help in your own journey, please reach out, because we're obviously looking for various and different applications for the technology. What we're looking at here is all this sort of software as a solution, but then our real-time sort of consultancy business is the one that really packages it up and puts it into your hands, for you to do what you want to do. And ultimately, we'll get here, and, you can do all this yourself. We're not quite there yet. Yeah. Okie dokie.
That's great. That's amazing. Thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll
See you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Hey, Dan, do you want to stay online?
Sure.
You can kill the recording now.